This is Peace Talks Radio, the series on peacemaking and nonviolent conflict resolution. I'm Paul Ingalls. Today, a profile in peace as we explore the life of Ralph Johnson Bunche.
These successful armistice negotiations have demonstrated conclusively the ability of the United Nations to mediate a serious conflict and to avert a dangerous threat to the peace.
We're pleased to have with us his son, Ralph Bunche Jr.
He never believed that fighting it out was the solution, so he started with a bias against armed conflict. Through humor and long hours, he was able to relax the parties that they were going to get a semblance of a fair shake on both sides of it.
Today on Peace Talks Radio, we'll talk with a woman who offers an approach to achieving inner peace. Her name is Byron Katie, author of Loving What Is and 1,000 Names for Joy.
I realized that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered. But when I didn't believe my thoughts, I didn't suffer. And I've come to see that this is true for every human being.
Byron Katie insists anyone can achieve more inner peace by utilizing a method of personal inquiry she's crafted that she calls the work.
So let's say, for example, I believed he doesn't care about me. The first question is it true? So I'm beginning to question the thought he doesn't care about me. The second question, can I absolutely know that it's true?
For building stable peace, we must find ways to provide opportunities for people to live decent lives.
That's Muhammad Yunus, co-winner of the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize, along with the Grameen Bank he founded in Bangladesh. His microcredit programs, making small loans to the poor without collateral, but with loads of trust, has helped lift millions out of poverty. If you're upset that there's not enough peace in the world, don't plan to complain to 1997 Nobel Peace Prize winner Jody Williams about it, unless you're ready to report to her that you're doing something yourself to help bring about change.
I think that part of what happens in today's world is we're purposefully overwhelmed with all the, gross things out there in the hope of turning us into Stepford citizens, automatons who think that we cannot make a difference in the world. So why bother? I totally disagree with that. Imagine if everybody of goodwill just in this country volunteered 1 hour a month at some organization working on something they care about, whether it's community, it doesn't have to be international, all of it adds up to a different world.
Are you ready to rally?
On a recent cool fall evening, a few nights before the big football rivalry between the University of New Mexico and the New Mexico State Aggies, I stopped by a pep rally where several hundred whooping UNM students had gathered on an athletic field surrounding a huge papier-mâché effigy of the NMSU mascot, which was about to be set afire. As the Aggie mascot burned for the frenzied crowd, I walked away with this question. When we comfortably allow ourselves to say we hate an opponent that we don't know, to deride them, to wish them humiliation, and employ a language of violence in anticipating a contest with them, does this make it easier for us to do just the same in our communities, our workplaces, in our politics? Today on Peace Talks Radio, we'll talk with author Alfie Kohn, who's pondered this and similar questions in his many provocative books.
Look, there's been social psych evidence now for some time. People develop something, the psychologists had to invent a new name for it. They call it counter-empathy. Ordinary people put in a competitive situation begin to take pleasure in the distress or failures of those who have arbitrarily been designated as their adversaries in some temporary game. These are people they never knew before.
In the first of a two-part program on Peace Talks Radio, we look at programs and people that are trying to bring a message of nonviolence and peacemaking into elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools.
When the teacher asked who wants to share the lesson on empathy, it was Alex. And what he shared that was very powerful, and what he said is, I was walking in my hood last weekend, and this kid gave me a dirty, angry look. The rules of the hood are if a kid gives you a dirty, angry look, you go beat him up. But because you taught me that you don't know me till you walk a mile in my shoes, and I don't know you till I walk a mile in your shoes, I walked up to this kid and said, "Why are you giving me a dirty look?" So the kid said to me, "I'm not giving you a dirty look. I'm angry because my brother was shot and killed last night." So what did you do, Alex? I held his hand. We cried together. I gave him a hug. I told him, "I know how you feel because I lost my uncle 6 months ago." One lesson. Tell me you can't teach nonviolence.
Today's program considers religious tolerance. What does it mean to be tolerant of another's religious beliefs? Is it enough to just live and let live?
A lot of intolerance, a lot of hate is based on fear of what we don't understand.
How should one respond to an effort to convert to another's religion? Is religious pluralism a possible answer to the conflict?
Pluralism doesn't describe whether we think the other person's version of heaven or salvation is correct. It describes how we want to build a city or a campus or a community with one another. Our movement has to be a movement led by young people.
And now we'd like to talk with Whitney Barth, a senior at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio.
How do we approach the people who are not necessarily, on the same page, convincing other religious people that we are not out to either convert them to a different religion or to undermine their religious teachings in any way, but to help realize that we're coming together for a common action so that we can empower one another.
Well, one of the goals of the conference was to bring together peace leaders from all over to engage in strategic thinking. What was some of the thinking that emerged?
Really, we came up with quite a map for a culture of peace. We must really come to understand that we're all one, that we're an interdependent web of life on the planet. We must really understand that peace is more than the absence of war, that it is the presence of what Jody Williams called socioeconomic equality, to know that everyone on the planet has what they need to live a decent life.
If you had lost a loved one in one of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001, how would you have responded?
This grief filled me. I had so much anger in me. I just felt we should strike out at someone. Quickly after that, in days, I realized that I had allowed some very primitive feelings to rise up in me that went against how I really felt about violence and about political violence in particular.
Would it be possible for you to turn such deep grief into action for peace and nonviolence?
As Martin Luther King says, wars are poor chisels for carving out peaceful tomorrows. And that's the name of our group.
Today on Peace Talks Radio, we'll talk with 3 members of 9/11 Families for Peaceful Tomorrows about their efforts to transform their loss and sorrow into a more peaceful world.
One of the amazing things that happened is when I joined September 11th Families for Peaceful Tomorrows, the first person I met was Colleen Kelly. And I was telling her about Laura, and I was telling her how surprising it was that Laura had been in the World Trade Center because she didn't work there. And Colleen looked at me and said, well, her brother had been at a conference on the 106th floor of the World Trade Center, and he wasn't normally there either. And then I just said, well, that's the conference my sister was working at. And it was just an amazing experience to realize that I had been brought together with this member of September 11th Families, and to know that her brother and my sister had died together, and that had brought us together, and that out of that would come this search for ways to make peace.